Begin on this Friday with a Fox News alert. The Trump campaign. Chairman Paul Manafort has resigned his post 2 days after major changes to the campaign's leadership were announced. And after Manafort came under fire for his ties to the former pro-Russian government in Ukraine. This is Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner. Here today, Fox Business Network's Dagen McDowell, Democratic strategist Julie Rogensky, National Review reporter Catherine Timpf, and today's hashtag one lucky guy, the former governor of the great state of Arkansas and former presidential candidate himself, Mike Huckabee. And we say you're outnumbered, but really you're part of the family.
I'm outclassed, I'm outdressed, I'm out everything.
That tie is fabulous.
This is
right?
Well, thank you.
Love it.
Yeah.
I may stay around for the whole hour.
You should.
Well, that would be
golly.
helpful.
Yes, it would be, I'm sure.
We got a lot going on. Glad you're
Well, I'm
here.
delighted to be here. Thank you, guys.
All right, well, we will begin with the fast-breaking developments of the past hour. Paul Manafort, the seasoned Republican Party insider who was brought in to help professionalize Donald Trump's campaign and prepare it for a general election run, now has stepped down from his post as campaign chairman. This comes just 2 days after Mr. Trump brought in veteran Republican pollster Kellyanne Conway as campaign manager and tapped Breitbart head Stephen Bannon to be the campaign CEO. The New York Times and other outlets are reporting allegations that Manafort raked in millions of dollars from his association with Ukraine's former pro-Russian government. Donald Trump says in a statement now, "I am very appreciative to Paul's great work in helping to get us where we are today, and in particular his work guiding us through the delegate and convention process. Paul is a true professional, and I wish him the greatest success," end quote. Governor, I'll come to you first with your thoughts on this. You've led campaigns before. When the announcements were made earlier this week, critics jumped and said, oh, no, it's not good when somebody else gets named the CEO. What do you make of all of this?
Well, there's probably a story behind this story, but it doesn't ultimately matter because Donald Trump is still the candidate. He's still going to be Donald Trump, and he's got new people around him. Paul Manafort did a very important job for Donald Trump, and that's get him through the convention and bring those delegates to the magic number that he had to have to be the nominee. Quite frankly, I'm not sure Donald Trump would have been able to be as successful through the convention had it not been for Manafort. So, you know, let's take nothing from him. Why he left, I just don't know. I haven't heard.
All right. Catherine?
I think it's interesting because Manafort's the guy who was Trump's stay on message, trying to calm things down a little bit. And now, because of all the controversy surrounding him, I think that the only way to really stay on message, he kind of had to go because he really was too much of a distraction. People are talking about these ties and making it more difficult for Trump to talk about, okay, vote for me instead of Hillary type of thing. He was constantly on the defensive.
Well, and the topic of Russia has come up so much with Donald Trump.
Exactly.
I would think having a deputy talk about Russia and then have these allegations against him would have been rather toxic.
Right, and the allegations were getting worse because the Associated Press had been reporting that there were confidential emails from Manafort's firm that contradicted his claims that he'd never lobbied on behalf of Ukrainian political figures in the U.S., so it looked like it was going to get worse. And Donald Trump himself is toting a trainload of baggage. I mean, and it's all his own luggage, if you will. He didn't even need any more of it.
You say he's got more luggage than Delta Airlines.
Yeah.
Is that what you're trying to tell us?
Thank you, Governor, for translating for the people
probably
in the
charges
South
more for it than Delta does.
But he doesn't. If this is going to be a mushrooming problem for Paul Manafort, and if Paul Manafort wasn't really running the campaign anyway, he needed to get the heck out.
But is it not lost on anybody that here's the press all worried about somebody who works for the candidate who's in the campaign? On the other side, you have a candidate who has collected hundreds of millions of dollars through the Family Foundation, shaking down foreign governments and corporations and doing favors through the government. Does that not bother anybody in the New York Times or the Washington Post?
Well, let me to just go back to Manafort for a second. Look, the problem with the Trump campaign is not Paul Manafort, and I've been very critical of Manafort's connections to Russia, which I think are unacceptable.
You've talked about it.
I'm a huge fan of Kellyanne Conway. I know her. She is bright. She's a fantastic person just on a human level. I'm very happy for her that she is where she is. I don't know, and Bannon's a whole different freak show and sideshow, but I don't know that any of them, regardless of whether it's Kellyanne, who's a great professional, or Bannon, who's never done this before, or Manafort, who's done this for people who I don't particularly think are good people, like Yanukovych in Ukraine, are going to be able to get Trump under control, because the problem is not the campaign managers, it's not the people in charge, it's Donald Trump. We keep talking on this couch about how he needs to get on message. He tried yesterday. I thought it was a fairly successful speech, but at the end of the day,
a lot of praise for his speech last night.
But he will never pivot, and we all know why.
As we move into the, excuse me, Governor, 1 second, because this will be fresh and new. As we move into the weekend, our Maria Bartiromo sat down with Eric Trump, talked with him just a short while ago. Let's get a touch of that, and Eric Trump talking about the Manafort resignation. So we'll now understand how maybe it plays inside the campaign. Watch.
I think my father didn't want to be, distracted by, whatever things that, Paul was dealing with. And, Paul was amazing. And, he helped us get through the primary process. He helped us get through the convention. He did a great job with the delegates, now you look at, Kellyanne and some of the other people that we're bringing in, and they're absolutely fantastic. And, I think they're going to be the ones that bring us, all the way through November 8th and ultimately get us the victory. But again, my father just didn't want to have the distraction looming, over the campaign, and quite frankly, looming over all the issues that Hillary is facing right now.
So, Governor, I wonder if Donald Trump shouldn't get some credit for recognizing this pretty quickly and taking care of it. I mean, you hear Eric Trump say, we didn't want this to become a distraction. My dad didn't want to, so on and so forth. I mean, I see the pounce on, oh, my gosh, there's a shakeup at the top. What I don't see is the credibility factor of somebody fired somebody because they felt like, or at least had a discussion about leaving, because I think resignations don't you still discuss.
There are two great marks of an executive. One is that you know how to hire good people and surround yourself with them. The other is that you know how to fire people when they either are not getting the job done.
Well, we've
or
all seen the TV show.
Here's something I'd like to know. Why hadn't Obama fired a bunch of people? I think it'd be refreshing to have a chief executive in the White House who knows how to fire people as well as how to hire people.
Well, I think it's interesting how much differently he dealt with this, as opposed to, Corey Lewandowski. Right away, he was like, this is a distraction. Too many people are talking about this. He's got to go right now because it's crunch time. Plus some.
But I'll tell you this, and Governor, you know this because you've run for office a bunch of times, and you know that in August, especially in late August, what are we, 10 days before Labor Day? This is now the third campaign team in the last 8 weeks. It's not good. It's mechanically not good. What we're talking about right now is mechanics.
Why can't it be good?
Because I will tell you why. What we should all be talking about, and not just us, but every cable station out there, is what Donald Trump's message is about defeating Hillary Clinton. Instead, we've spent the last 8 weeks talking about the drama internally.
And this can't be part of that message?
No. When you talk about mechanics on a campaign, and Governor, you know this as well as I do, you don't win. You need to stay on message. Real people don't care about Paul Manafort, but in fact,
I'll talk about it in the next segment because I got something to say. I can't wait to hear it, David. I got positive things, glass half full things to say.
Ooh, I'm thirsty. Okay, more changes for Donald Trump. The GOP presidential nominee now says he regrets some of his past comments that may have offended people in a speech many Republicans say is the Trump pivot they have been waiting for. Watch.
Sometimes, in the heat of debate, and speaking on a multitude of issues, you don't choose the right words, or you say the wrong thing. I have done that. And believe it or not, I regret it. Thank you. And I do regret it, particularly where it may have caused personal pain.
And while Trump's speech may have caught many of his critics by surprise, not so for those who know him best. His son, Eric Trump, again, watch.
I really like humble Trump, and that's what I saw last night. That's that's the father I know, and here's a man who's not a politician, right? He's not a PC guy either, and he's run on not being politically correct. He'll admit that he's straight, and he goes out there and he gets passionate, and he's not reading off of a teleprompter 99% of the time like all these other politicians are, and how many times in the debates, and we've spoken about this before, but you hear the same little rehearsed soundbite, and that's not who my father is. And so he's out there every single day, and he has strayed, and he admitted it last night, and I think that was great.
The Hillary team, quite a different reaction, as you might expect. Her campaign says, quote, "We learned tonight that a speechwriter and teleprompter knows he has much for which he should apologize. But that apology tonight is simply a well-written phrase until he tells which one of his many offensive bullying and divisive statements he regrets and changes his tune altogether, end quote. You have something positive to add.
Well, I'll speak to that statement from the Hillary Clinton campaign. It shows how deep the organization is, because you know they wrote that doggone thing about 6 months ago and were just waiting to issue it, anticipating that he would say something like this. But in the last 2 weeks, Donald Trump, I think in less than 2 weeks, he's given 4 prepared speeches that he read off a teleprompter. And this is a measured candidate. And to Julie's point, it is all about the follow-through. It's what he does in the days and weeks ahead. But what's interesting here is with Kellyanne Conway, with Steve Bannon on board, everybody said, oh, it's going to be the same old insult throw-in, body slamming Trump from the primary season. That is not what we've seen. And you've actually seen his surrogates do the dirty work, bringing up issues about Hillary Clinton's health and the like. So right now, this little microcosm, it's something
Hold on one second. I want to ask the governor, with that, does that make this campaign a little bit more typical and then let Trump go be Trump, if you will?
Absolutely. One of the things, and I said this to Donald Trump when we were traveling, I said, you need a goon squad. Go get a goon squad. This is the group of people that go out and they do this surrogate
Julie is
stuff.
agreeing with you.
I'm laughing.
It's what you do.
I'm laughing because you're actually saying in public what I think everybody says in politics in private, which is you have a goon squad,
Julie.
right? I agree with you. We know
that.
it, of course we do.
You have surrogates go out, and they're the ones who take the baseball bats and crack kneecaps. The candidate stays on message. Well, this is, look, if you...
I'm just waiting for the word figuratively. Anywhere.
We've got Jeb Galooly over here who's like,
you cannot stand the side of your own blood, don't run for anything. This is a bloody, savage business. No, and it just is.
You were candid about it.
Why were you involved in it?
I was just going to say, you're the nicest people we know.
He's got a goon squad.
The mean side of me, you haven't quite seen.
He's got a goon squad. Let me just say this. Wait a second. Did I just hear us say that there's going to be a pivot coming? That Trump is going to pivot? Because this has been going on for now 24 hours. There's no pivot.
Yeah.
Exactly. This was a great speech, but it's kind of like
he's going to start going crazy in the next couple of days. But let me just also say this.
But you don't know what will happen.
But it's like if you
watch the speech last night?
It was one night. It was one night, so it's kind of like going. It was kind of like going home and be like, he's changed after one good night, which is never a good idea.
I would say this. I mean, this would have been, if it had not been for that pesky email scandal for Hillary Clinton, maybe one that she could have sunk her teeth in, you know, if Donald Trump had taken the bait for some of the nasty things that were said last weekend.
That's a good point.
But that didn't happen. Instead, we saw a string of those things that everybody kept saying were not possible. So the question is, who's behind that? I want to hear a little bit from Kellyanne Conway now about Trump and his regrets. Can we play that?
He was talking about anyone who feels offended by anything he said, and that's all him. You know, he took extra time yesterday going over that speech with a pen. So that was a decision he made. Those are his words. And I hope that everybody who's criticized him at some point, David, for being insensitive or for mocking someone, at least show some recognition and some forgiveness.
Dagan?
I think that her hands on this campaign, you can already see them in terms of the tone and the demeanor of what's happening. And I just want to point out, she's such a flawed candidate. They're just getting ready to start some advertising in 5 critical swing states. Kellyanne Conway. And
Hillary Clinton
is the flawed.
Yes.
Flawed candidate.
Yes, Hillary Clinton
From your
is the flawed candidate.
perspective.
Sorry. The Trump campaign is going to start advertising in 5 critical key swing states. Hillary Clinton has spent $4 million just in Nevada in advertising there. She's up by 2 percentage points in the latest poll, the Suffolk County poll, where Suffolk University poll, where that is a huge Latino voting bloc in that state, and she's up by 2 percentage points. So my point is that I think that with tweaking and massaging and a different message, and with Kellyanne Conway, maybe Trump listening to her, it could be.
And you can count on ads to stay on message, which is good.
The one thing I'm going to say, though, is I also apologize to anybody whose feelings I may have hurt. I don't necessarily think I've said anything to hurt your feelings, but if you were hurt by them, I apologize. That's what Trump did. He needs to say, what does he apologize for? Does he apologize to John McCain? Does he apologize to Serge Kowalewski from the New York Times? Does he apologize to Mrs. Khan?
Governor, does he have to be
what
that
does he have
specific?
to apologize for? Or just because their feelings were hurt, because they were so sensitive.
If you're going to get into apologizing to everybody who has their feelings hurt, all you will do is apologize, because everybody gets their feelings hurt, and a lot of times People's feelings do get hurt. But again, this is a rough business. As Michael Corleone said, this is the life we have chosen.
Oh, my goodness.
And if you cannot stand... No, I'm just telling you, guys.
No, I know. You're being candid.
We're just way too sensitive. And if you're that sensitive, stay out of politics.
Well, I think John McCain has a right to be sensitive. Last word goes to the governor.
Amid growing allegations of pay-to-play shadiness, the Clinton Foundation reportedly plans to turn over operations to independent entities and stop accepting foreign donations. If Hillary is elected, that is. Well, that's a ... But Republicans are calling it too little too late. We will talk about it. And President Obama is hitting the golf course again during his Martha's Vineyard vacation, while Louisiana is ravaged by flooding. The mainstream media, some of them essentially completely silent. That certainly was not the case with former President George W. Bush. Double standard?
The Clinton Foundation reportedly planning to turn over operations to independent entities and stop raising foreign and corporate donations if Hillary Clinton is elected the president. The foundation has faced scrutiny for accepting money from countries like Saudi Arabia and, of course, the pay-to-play allegations that continue to dog the campaign. RNC Chairman Reince Priebus responding, quote, "This effort to shield Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation after more than a year of controversy is too little, too late. The Clinton Foundation should immediately cease accepting foreign donations and return every penny ever taken from other countries, several of which have atrocious human rights records and ties to terrorism." Donald Trump would also face potential conflicts of interest if he's elected. Trump has said he would put his real estate and other businesses into a blind trust, most likely with his children as trustees. Governor Huckabee, they're getting religion now at the Clinton Foundation, aren't they?
Well, yeah, but, after you've robbed every bank and 7-Eleven in town, what is there to do? You retire. You've got all the money. They've already shaken down every foreign government, every big corporation to say, we're not going to take any more money. Well, big whoopee deal. What are you going to do with all you got?
They didn't even say that. They said if she's elected president, she won't take any more money. So what's to stop her from taking all the money now, and then once she's president, the favors come then? Theoretically, it doesn't make any difference.
So do we get like a blotter of everything that has gone on if she becomes president? I mean, shouldn't we get a list of, those emails?
Should, yes, probably no.
It was lost with those 33,000 emails. It was disappeared. I don't know what happened to it, just like that other stuff. The dog ate my homework.
It's fair to ask, where did the money go then? Where did it come from? What was it used for? If she's saying that as president she would change things, what's bringing that on, outside of the fact that we would expect you not to be taking in money from foreign entities if you're president?
You ready?
Yes.
I think they should never have had the foundation in the first place once she became Secretary of State. I think it was only going to be a conflict of interest. The optics were always going to be horrible. I don't know why they did it. And I think that they should never have done it.
Julie, you know why they did it. It was to enrich themselves, both in power and purse.
No, because
they're obsessed with money.
Because he could have done speeches, and by the way, that's also problematic when she was Secretary of State. But they're enriching themselves through speeches, not necessarily the foundation.
Well, from what I'm reading, didn't some of the money flow through the foundation to pay for some of those? I mean,
I
have speeches highly tied to expenses.
I have some of the stats. There were 60 companies that lobbied the State Department that gave $26 million to the Clinton Foundation. In terms of speeches, there were more than 24 companies and groups in one foreign government that paid Bill Clinton $8 million to give speeches when they also had matters in front of Hillary Clinton's State Department. 15 of them also donated $5 to $15 million to the Clinton Foundation. And in several instances, State Department actions benefited those who paid Mr. Clinton.
So that's why I say it flowed through, because it flowed through along one binary point: access.
And that's the problem. The problem is that when he left the White House, she became a senator. So she was voting on matters that were obviously affecting people that were paying him for speeches. I get that you're a woman, you're allowed to have your own career. You should have your own career. Your husband's career should not be tied to yours. But the optics of this were horrible. And when she left as Secretary of State and she started doing these paid speeches herself, knowing that she was going to run for president, and I think we all know that she was going to run for president, the fact that she did this, I remember saying this to actually a fellow Democrat, to a friend, why would you do this? The optics are so horrific.
So did no one tell her?
I didn't tell her, but I certainly have said it publicly
before. This is a personality issue.
Right.
This is who they are, and what's going to change if she gets elected to the presidency? The last I read earlier this morning, Bill Clinton has still not come out and said, I'm not giving paid speeches if she wins the White House.
Well, he shouldn't. I mean, that's unacceptable, and he shouldn't, and he should do whatever a first gentleman would do, which is whatever a first lady does, which is pick an issue and run with it the way Michelle Obama has with health, the way that Laura Bush did with literacy. I mean, that's what you do. And if you don't want to do it,
got the Clinton
Jimmy Carter has been a great example of what to do post-presidency. I did not think he was a great president, but he's a great person individually and as a humanitarian. And I have to say that the way he's handled his post-presidency is far more commendable. He's done some things I don't agree with. He's said a lot of things I don't agree with, but he's stayed out of a scandal-filled line of trouble. That's commendable.
Yes, it is. A tale of two responses to tragedy. Donald Trump touring flood-ravaged Louisiana while President Obama continuing his vacation in Martha's Vineyard. So is this a case of bad optics? And what are the mainstream media saying? And then there's this.
There was nothing marked classified on my emails, either sent or received.
Just some of the words that could come back to haunt Hillary Clinton. What the House Judiciary Committee is planning to do in regard to her testimony last year about her email scandal and how it could affect her campaign heading into the fall.
Well, the pictures, the reality of it all down in Louisiana will break your heart. That flooding is putting two different responses in the spotlight now. At least 13 people have died. Thousands are living in shelters now in what the Red Cross is calling the worst natural disaster in the U.S. since Hurricane Sandy. Donald Trump and Governor Pence touring the flood-ravaged state right now. They just got there a short time ago. They're meeting with victims and first responders there. At a rally last night, Trump spoke about the disaster.
I hope everyone in Louisiana knows that our country is praying for them and standing with them to help them in these difficult hours. They are very, very difficult. Thank you.
So from a presidential candidate to the actual president, who reportedly continues his vacation on Martha's Vineyard. He played golf with Larry David yesterday, the actor. And it's sparking criticism from our own #OneLuckyGuy, Governor Mike Huckabee, writing about this in an open letter to the president. Here's what it says, and I quote you right while you sit next to me here. Maybe if it rains in Martha's Vineyard and you have to cancel a golf game, you might fire up old Air Force One and venture down to check on my friends in Louisiana. They need you right now. Not because you can personally fix it, but because you showing up means a lot of resources will show up, as will the cameras, to help the nation see how bad it is. Meanwhile, Louisiana's Democratic governor is defending the president's response, saying it is not the time to visit.
I want you to know that within hours of me requesting a federal declaration, the president granted the declaration and called me to discuss it. While the president is welcome to visit, I would just as soon he give us another week or two, get back to a greater sense of normalcy here, and then he can visit.
You know, I know that every governor can see it differently. I'm curious to get your response on when a president visits, if it's helpful. But I will say this, in this day and age of technology, there's a lot you can get done remotely. And it can just be about optics, but it also can be about heart.
It's more than that. The reason governors and presidents show up at a natural disaster is, number one, it calls attention that wouldn't be called. Every camera shows up with you. So people see it in a way they want. It becomes the first story on the evening news, not the fifth. Number two, it expresses the sympathy of the entire nation. And it's like the country putting their arms around people who have lost everything. No, the president can't go in and personally make the waters recede, although he referenced that he could do that back in 2008. Here's what he can do. Him seeing it means he will marshal more resources toward it, and so will churches and the Red Cross and the Salvation Army. Everybody will say, oh my gosh, I had no idea it was this bad.
Well, that's an
he owes the country this action as a point of leader, and if after 7.5 years of being president, he doesn't understand that role of the job, then he just simply has not been paying attention.
So I have a question for you, Julie, just in terms of what it means to be a lame duck. You know, some of the criticism for President Obama today is that he just doesn't care. And is that, I mean, heart-wise, there's no way to measure a man's heart in that way. But when it comes to the actual doing of the job, is this what lame duck looks like?
No, you know, I actually am very torn about this, and I have a question for you because you were governor and you do know this. I remember Sandy very well. It happened in the neighboring state from where we are, and I have a lot of friends and family who live in New Jersey. I'm wondering whether the president showing up right now, this is a legitimate question, I'm not defending him, showing up, everything that entails, the highways being shut down, local security being diverted to the presidential visit. The media showing up with their cameras and their trucks.
I heard no one saying this during Katrina,
but wait a
though.
second.
And he doesn't have anything else to do.
But let me finish my thought. It's not that he's got nothing else to do. My question is legitimately, as a governor, if you're in the middle of this kind of emergency, not next week and not 2 weeks from now when things are going to recede, hopefully, and is this helpful as a governor? If you were the governor of Arkansas today and this were going on in Arkansas, would it be helpful to you to have that diversion of a presidential visit as this is going on, rather than putting those resources to use?
It's a very fair and it's a great question. And the answer is yes, it means a lot when the president shows up. To his credit, Bill Clinton, when a big tornado hit, he was on the phone to me, and usually 48 hours afterwards, he was there. He was always careful not to come in while we were in the middle of recovery, but he came in, and he was personal about it. And I don't think there was anybody.
But let me just make a point about President Obama.
He should have been there by now. This happened several days ago. You get to the outskirts. You don't go right in the heart.
This is an ongoing event.
When
this
James
is
Foley,
somewhat like a Katrina in that sense. The rain has been relentless.
But when James Foley was beheaded, he made a statement and then was on the golf course.
And that was wrong.
Exactly. It's a repeated pattern.
Right. It's repeated. When there was a Brussels terror attack, one of our NATO allies being attacked by Islamic radical terrorists, he's at a baseball game in Cuba sitting next to Raul Castro doing the wave. So I don't think people who have a problem with this have a problem with the way he's reacted time and again. And after that Foley incident, he said in an interview he should have anticipated the optics because part of the job is the theater of it.
I want to go back to what you were saying, though, just comparing presidents, Catherine.
Yeah, people still criticize George W. over Katrina, which was obviously a wrong thing to do. But still, that was a long time ago. And this, people are so quick to want to make excuses, even though this clearly is a pattern. As Dagan was talking about, and whether it's, you can say, does he care, does he not care? Regardless, it looks like he doesn't care. And if I were there, I would be upset about it. At least try to look like you care. All my stuff is destroyed, all my friends are dying, and you're golfing, and you're the president. You can't deny that that looks bad, and that should be something he thinks about more often than he does.
Well, and for the governor of Louisiana to kind of get involved too. I mean, you know what's happening there. He's trying to calm people down. But his experience is going to be very different than somebody living in a shelter at night.
Right, exactly.
Let's move on to this. House Republicans stepping up their push to bring perjury charges against Hillary Clinton. Next month, members of the House Judiciary Committee reportedly planning to question FBI officials about the issue during a general oversight hearing. Two leading Republicans laying out their case for charging Clinton with lying to Congress, which includes Clinton testifying that nothing she sent or received was marked classified. 3 emails were. She claimed her lawyers read all emails to see what should be turned over to state. They did not. She said that she turned over all her work-related emails in 2014. She did not. She said that she used only one server, and she had multiple private servers. Let's discuss this. Julie, does this hurt her, or does it make her look sympathetic? Because the Republicans have a problem with that sometimes.
I don't think it makes her look sympathetic. I don't think it hurts her, because I think this particular scandal, like most of her scandals, are pretty much baked in. If you think Hillary Clinton's a liar that you can't trust, that she perjured herself, that she was responsible for people dying in Benghazi, and all the other litany of hearings that we've had over the last several years with Hillary Clinton, guess what? You're not voting for Hillary Clinton. If you're a Democrat and you think this is a witch hunt, you're probably going to vote for Hillary Clinton. If you're an independent voter, you haven't decided yet who you're voting for, this is not what's going to affect you. What's going to affect you is how each of these candidates is going to address issues that are important to you. And so I would say if they want to have this theater, that's fine, but they're not going to affect this election by doing this. If they want to do this because they believe it's the right thing to do governmentally, God bless, they should do it. But if it's a political calculus, it's not a smart one.
Governor, that I see in the timing of all of this is that just a few days ago we heard that these candidates were starting to get their national security briefings and advisories. And so, okay, so they're going to be people who you say, Julie, just accept the fact that you don't trust her. But now there are people who have to think about it in a fresh way now because she's starting to get that information all over again.
Well, it is important, though, whether you trust your president.
And is it classified what they're getting?
I think some of the things that you're getting are classified, which means this. Before they get that information, They have to have an FBI interview in which they are told, here are the parameters of what you can hear, and here's what you can do with it, and here's what you can't do with it. And they tell you, you're under penalty of law if you violate it. Because that's how this works.
But I don't think it makes a difference. I think talking about earlier, why did they have the Clinton Foundation? Why did they do all that? Because they know they can get away with it, and they're usually right. I don't know what Hillary could do at this point, where people would be like, yeah, well, and they just kind of, kind of goes away after a while. And that attitude is terrifying, especially if you add, having the power of being the leader of the free world. That's not going to humble you into accountability somehow. So I'm concerned about it. I don't understand why more people aren't, but they don't seem to be.
I love how she's trying to blame Colin Powell for making the suggestion, which is just patently false. Because, again, it's evidence that the server, that they were setting it up even before she allegedly had this conversation with Colin Powell, who used an outside email address, not a server.
They should not have a long hearing, have a short hearing. The 14 hours is ridiculous. Do it short, do it quick, then you make a point. If you have it long, they praise her for having the stamina to sit there. That was a big mistake in the Benghazi
That
hearing.
was what I was trying to get at, is that the Republicans tend to overplay their hand and they make mistakes.
1 hour.
Never miss an opportunity.
1 hour and be done.
Opportunity, the Republicans.
That's exactly right.
Thank you.
Listen to the gov. Come on, man. The State Department now admitting that the U.S. used a $400 million cash payment to Iran as, quote, leverage to secure the freedom of American hostages held there. So is leverage just really a code word for ransom? And whether the move emboldened Iran to take other Americans prisoner.
For the first time, the State Department is now conceding the $400 million payment made to Iran earlier this year was tied to the release of those four American hostages. State Department spokesman John Kirby admitted yesterday they delayed making the payment for several hours to retain maximum leverage and ensure the prisoners were freed. He still insists, though, it was not a ransom. Even earlier today, he was saying it.
Nowhere in those discussions, nowhere was there any talk about ransom or payment to get our Americans back. We took advantage of the momentum, and it would have been foolish. And you and I would be having a much different conversation if we had gone ahead and released the money and then Iran reneged on the deal. There's not a lot of trust between the United States and Iran.
The Trump campaign put some of the blame on Hillary Clinton, saying she helped put together an Iran deal that likely funded terrorism, and that makes her unfit to be president. We'll talk about that in just a second. I kind of want to unpack this, though, from the beginning. So sometimes when you hear an admission, you'll hear an actual admission. This was kind of wrapped politically, and you kind of had to figure out what's really being said here.
I think Kirby was kind of caught off guard when James Rosen pressed him on the question. What could he say? I think he's an honest guy. I think he does his best to try to be honest. And he was honest, and that kind of pull the rabbit out of the hat. Look, the fact is we shouldn't be giving Iran any money for anything. What do they do with it? They turn around and they support Hamas and Hezbollah. They kill, they kidnap, including Americans. They support terrorism around the world. This is a regime that we should never negotiate with. We shouldn't have released the sanctions. We shouldn't have created the deal that gives them nuclear capacity. And we just shouldn't deal with them, period. And this has been... Obama thinks it's going to be his legacy. It will be, but not in the way he wants it to be.
And not only are they using the money for bad things once they get it, but the fact that we gave that to them is creating a literal, tangible financial incentive to kidnap Americans.
Absolutely.
I want to point to Kirby's body language, because the truth really does hurt when it slaps you in the face, doesn't it?
It's like having a tooth taken out without the shot.
I want to point out something. We would not know about this ransom payment. We wouldn't know about any of this if not for the Wall Street Journal and its incredible reporting. And they are the ones who did the follow-up story that led to this admission. And in this story, you know that the Iran airplane, it was an Iran Air airplane that picked up this money in Geneva. That airline had been sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury Department, and it was one day before this cash and prisoner transfer that these sanctions were lifted on this very airline because of this Iran nuclear
deal. A lot of convenient coincidences.
Nothing to see here. Let's move along. You know, I mean, come on.
So then my question is, you've got $400 million. Part of that, so we've been told $1.7 billion that was supposed to go for weapons, but then the Shah was overthrown in the 1970s, so that money sat, and there was all this adjudication over whether or not they really should get the money. But we give them this money for leverage. Now, I know you say that Admiral Kirby was, being honest, but the most honest thing would be we paid them this money because we wanted to get our people home, right? Leverage, is that code for ransom?
Well, it was ransom. When you pay someone and you give them something in exchange for something else, the quid pro quo, this for that, that's what happened.
That's what the word means.
It means ransom. You may not call it ransom. You can call it charity, but it's still ransom.
Well, I've said this before. Mark my words and watch the $2 billion that's in banks here in this country that's supposed to go to victims of Iranian-sponsored terrorism. Ahmadinejad has actually reached out to the president saying, we want that money back. Iran has 3 American prisoners. You watch a prisoner exchange happen before January.
Julie, you're very quiet.
I'm not quiet, actually. The one thing I want to say, I had this conversation with Guy Benson, of all people, last night in the green room, where I'm very torn, because I would hope that if it were my son who's in an Iranian prison, that we would spend whatever it took to get him out of it. On the other hand, of course,
the administration said you're pretty much on your own if it's your kid over there.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
There's no defensive either. This is a difficult situation. There's no good answers to it. I don't even know what.
So they pick and choose.
Here's the answer: stop lying. Stop lying to the American people and treating us like a bunch of fools.
Well, that part is true. I agree with that.
All right.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
Don't apologize. Just breaking it real. Controversial new rules at a top university to encourage gender equality. But now critics say an all-women's group is being given a pass, while all men's clubs are slapped with sanctions. Frying it up on this Friday. More Outnumbered in just a moment. First, though, let's go to John Scott with what's cooking up for the second hour of Happening Now. Hey, John.
Hey, Harris. In our next hour, Donald Trump is touring the destruction after the devastating floods that left 40,000 homes damaged or destroyed. It comes as Mr. Trump resets his campaign with a well-received speech and as former campaign chairman Paul Manafort steps down. Hillary Clinton is dealing with more revelations from the FBI investigation into her private email server. And as the Clinton Foundation makes some potential changes, we have the latest on that. Also, firefighters making some progress in one of the worst of California's wildfires. But fires are raging really all over the West, including in Yellowstone, and the weather is not helping. Rick Reichmuth will be along with the forecast. All ahead, Happening Now. Harris.
We will be watching, John. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Kat?
All right, an update to a story we told you about in the spring. Harvard University is banning members of single-sex clubs from having certain privileges on campus. But now the Daily Caller reports a women's-only club, Seneca, will be exempted as long as they make a minor change to their bylaws explicitly banning men. But this same privilege is not being given to all male clubs. In an email obtained by the Harvard Crimson, the co-presidents of Seneca writing, quote, although men may apply, our membership can be made up wholly of women without incurring the sanctions of the administration's new policy. But a campus civil liberties group telling the Daily Caller, Harvard is encouraging this women's group to, quote, blatantly lie about its practices. Now, Harris, what they're saying here is, oh, it's a 501c and that's not purely a social club, and that's why. Do you really think that's why? Or do you think it's because they're realizing, oh, why are we doing this?
Well, I'm a little confused about what the difference would be. Right.
In practice, what is really the difference?
So if you have a men's club that says no women allowed and you have a women's club that says no men allowed, I mean, that should be its own club. The people who maybe they could form their own club. I don't really understand what the difference is.
You know what I don't get? So back in my day, you used to, when I went to the Harvard of Boston.
Which was 15 minutes ago, by the way.
Which was a long time ago, yes. I was actually at Harvard the other day looking fondly across the river at my alma mater, Boston University. My friend said, what's the difference? You're separated by a river and about 800 on the SATs. That's what they separate, which I thought was a little unfair, but true. But what I don't understand is you have fraternities, you have sororities, or you used to have them, right? What's the big deal? I don't understand what this whole notion is of trying to get rid of them.
Can you belong to a fraternity if you're a woman? I mean, that's a good question.
Well, but
why do you want to?
Well, gender's not a thing anymore.
This is the result of political correctness and the push for everybody having no sense of gender. I mean, this is the inevitable result, and it lacks common sense, and it makes people look stupid when they go out and say, we have an all-women's club, but we really can't be, so we're pretending we're not.
So, again, the people who couldn't get into either club could form their own and just call it the club.
Yeah, are you allowed to just hang out with this all men or all women, or how far does that go? And why do you think they have to say say, oh, we'll allow men, but we're just not gonna. I mean, what good, Dagan, what good does that do at all?
Well, because they're trying to be, they realize the benefits to having a single-sex club and having just all women, but they want to be politically correct. They want, because they know that, well, but if I say I'm a woman and I want to join that men's club, then I've got to let the men in my club, but I don't really want them here because I don't want to have to put makeup on and look good for them.
I mean,
I went to an all-girls high school for 3 years. That was the greatest experience of my life because I didn't have to worry about boys. I just had to worry about learning. And so I see the huge.
Would you have
what was there to worry about?
If boys had wanted to go to your school, like if the door had been open for them as an option?
There were some co-ed classes.
Oh, interesting.
There were some co-ed classes, and I looked just as dreadful in those classes as I did with all the girls.
Yeah, but hanging out with the girls or the guys is a valuable thing and a normal thing to want to do. I think that anybody who's honest with themselves can recognize that, right? They're just worried about what people will say about it.
Well, maybe they're just also worried how far will it go. So then you'll have a club and no tall people allowed. And Governor, what in the world would you and I do then?
I don't know.
More
yeah, we don't want people like you are going to clubs, the short club.
Big thank you to Governor Huckabee for being our #OneLuckyGuy. I want to tell everybody you wrote that open letter to President Obama. It's on your Facebook and your Twitter pages.
Yeah, I hope people will read it because it's pretty blunt, but I think it's a fair letter to the president about why he should show up in Louisiana.
You also have a tweet saying that you were the eye candy today. You did not.
What can I say?
Yeah. And we learned that he'll cut you if you cross him.
Have a fabulous, blessed weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday at noon Eastern. Happening Now starts now.